Hello everyone, my name is Preston Dennett, and welcome to a new episode of UFOs and the Paranormal. It's October, Halloween is approaching, so in honor of that I thought I would present a show about ghosts. I have 3 really creepy ghost stories I'd like to share with you today, and in fact that's the title of today's episode, 3 really creepy ghost stories. Each of these ghost stories is different and I think reveals a little bit about how ghosts manifest and the various types of hauntings that there are. The first case I'd like to talk about, I call Case 1, The Ghost That Came to Bed. This involves a lady I'll call Sally Sanders, who lived with her husband in a new home in Merced. What would you do if you woke up one night feeling somebody crawling into bed with you, and when you looked, nobody was there? And what if it happened not once or twice, but over and over again? What would you do? Sally Sanders, that's not her real name, she did not have the luxury of forethought when this experience happened to her. As I said, she had just moved with her husband into their new home in Merced, California, and they had lived there for only a few months when she began having strange experiences. Every once in a while, she would wake up in bed to feel someone crawling into bed with her when nobody was there. It felt to her just like there was a person lying next to her on the bed. The bed would creak and the blankets would rustle. As Sally says, "It was really funny, but it scared me. I never laughed. When I was alone and I would go to bed, I would get into bed and I would feel something get on the bed, turn, and lay down on his side of the bed. And all I would do was get up and go into the other room, and I would spend the night in there. It was kind of scary. I don't know what it was exactly, but it was kind of weird." So the first time this happened, Sally was scared and upset, but she figured it was a unique experience and that it wouldn't happen again. But she was wrong. It happened again and then again, and each time it was the same thing. She would feel someone slip into bed, and when she looked, nobody was there. Each time she got more and more frightened, and when it happened, she always went into the other room to sleep. And when it kept happening, she became increasingly concerned that their ghost would never go away. So one evening, Sally decided to try an experiment. Since the ghost always lay down in the same spot, she decided to move the bed to the other side of the room. She was hoping it would make the ghost go away. Instead, it appeared to make things worse. As Sally says, and I quote, "It stayed so long that I felt as though it was a bad experience. So I turned my bed around. It was that same spot. It was where the end of the bed hit that spot, and that ghost used to lay there. One night it touched my toe. I felt it. I actually felt it. It was weird. It felt like something brushed my toe." Now at this point the haunting seemed to increase. Moving the bed around had only evidently made the ghost angry. Sally, however, decided to stick it out, but only for one reason. They had decided to move out of the house. Sally was very glad to be leaving. The ghost was making her very concerned. She knew she couldn't live with it much longer. And that's when the ghosts apparently attacked. As she says, "It was about 2 weeks before we were to move. And I woke up one night, or my husband woke me up, and I couldn't breathe. I had this feeling that something was on my chest. I felt like something was sitting on my chest. My husband woke me up, and he said that I was making all this noise. It was as if I couldn't breathe, and it was really aggravating me. And he woke me up, but it felt like something was crushing me, almost crushing me like I was an accordion. It was really weird, but it never bothered me again, and we stayed there only another 2 weeks." So Sally found this experience utterly terrifying, and she was very happy to be moving. She never experienced anything like that after she left. She doesn't know who the ghost was or why he kept coming to her bed, and she doesn't really care. She just wants to forget about this experience. and if she had it her way, she would never think about it again. So I think you'll agree that was a pretty creepy ghost story. And the second ghost story I'd like to present to you today, I call A Vision of Blood. This involves a lady by the name of Dorothy Hudson. I interviewed her firsthand. She had a very creepy experience involving what I would call a crisis apparition. So her story actually takes place in Los Angeles, California, at a business office. So I'll just quote Dorothy directly because she described her experience very vividly. As Dorothy says, one experience that I had was a very, very emotional experience. I was working with this woman that I did not get along with. She was a bill collector. She was just an ugly person, inside and out. And she and I had not an argument, but a disagreement. She left that day and we were not speaking to each other. The next morning, she was supposed to go out to Titus Street in Van Nuys to pick up a check that a person owed her. They told her, "You come out there and pick up this check," which once in a while she did, but not very often. She was going to pick up the check at 8:30 in the morning and be to work by 9. But by 9:30, she didn't come into work. And we didn't have a phone call from her, which we thought was a little strange. Around 10 or 10:30, I went to the restroom. The ladies' restroom is all white. I walked into the restroom, and when I opened the door, I saw blood spattered all over the floor, all over the walls. And then that flash went away. It was a momentary thing, and I said, "Oh my God, what the hell did that mean?" Dorothy just shook her head and tried to put the vision out of her mind. She told one of her coworkers, who thought that it was not a good sign. Dorothy had already figured that much out, but she hadn't connected it to her coworker, who was inexplicably late. It wasn't until a few hours later that Dorothy found out what had caused her vision of blood. As Dorothy says, and I quote, "Around 11 o'clock, this woman, her name was Marjorie, her husband called and asked, 'Is Marjorie there?' And I told him no. She went out to Titus Street in Van Nuys this morning to pick up a check, and she hasn't called or anything, and we don't know where she is." He said, "Oh no, oh my God, no." I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I don't know. I just got a call from the police. I'll call you later." Well, a couple of hours later, Dorothy says, he called up and said that after Marjorie picked up the check, she was jaywalking across the street to her car. A Mayflower moving van did not see her coming, backed up, knocked her down on the ground, and ran over and killed her. My boss went to her car, and he said that she was killed just a few feet from her car, and that there was blood all over the street, all over the car, just blood everywhere. And that whole incident happened when I saw blood all over the bathroom. It happened approximately an hour after she was killed, because she died at approximately 9 to 10 in the morning, and it was 10 o'clock when I went into the restroom, 10:15. And I knew something was wrong someplace. There was a lot of blood. She was literally run over by this truck, a huge, big Mayflower van. It was kind of traumatic for me to walk into a room and see blood spattered all over the walls. But it was just a flash. I came back in, I told my boss's daughter, I just really had a bizarre thing happen. I just walked into the bathroom and I saw this. She said, "Oh my God, something's happened to somebody." And I said, "I don't know." But it never dawned on me that it would be Marjorie, someone that I immediately worked with, or that it would happen within the hour that she died. And the third case I'd like to talk about today, I call A Brother's Ghost. This is a very poignant story about a young man who lost his older brother to a tragic accident, and how his brother's spirit appeared to him and let him know that he is still all right. One of the saddest of all of life's tragedies is the death of a child. When a young life is cut short, it is much different than the death of someone who has lived a long life. The death of children is hard to understand, and for many of the surviving family members, the grief can be overwhelming. Not only do the parents have trouble adjusting to the loss, but the deceased person's siblings can be just as deeply affected. Tom Walker, that is a pseudonym, of Los Angeles, California, was living a normal life with his mother, father, and brother. Then, in the early 1970s, Tom's life was drastically changed by the death of his older brother, Jeffrey. That's also a pseudonym. But Jeffrey had a good job at the time and was about to be married when he was involved in a tragic car accident. He died at the scene of fatal injuries sustained in this accident. Tom, his little brother, was of course devastated by his brother's death. He became very depressed and couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. He simply could not let go of the brother whom he had idolized and loved, and for many weeks afterwards he remained gloomy, not wanting to live a life that suddenly seemed so empty. His parents tried to help, but they were also distraught by Jeffrey's death, and there was little they could do than offer their love. Tom's friends were also unable to lift him out of his dark depression. Everyone knew that Tom was depressed by his brother's death, but nobody realized how far his depression actually went. However, his love for his brother was so strong that he found a way to transcend the barrier between life and death. Before his death, Jeffrey, the older brother who died, had his own room, and in his room he had a large swinging chair hanging from a hook in the ceiling. This was a heavy chair, so he used metal chains to hang the chair, and one of his favorite things to do was to sit in this chair and swing back and forth while listening to rock music. Tom would often find his brother spending his time this way. And it was a few weeks after Jeffrey's death that Tom made a bizarre discovery. He had been mourning the loss of his brother, and for old time's sake, he had been playing some of the rock music his brother used to listen to while swinging in this chair. So one day, mourning the loss of his brother, Tom decided that he would just go into his brother's room and play some of the rock music that his brother used to listen to while swinging in the chair. He turned the music on very loud and just sat on the bed, imagining and remembering what it was like when his brother was still alive. And suddenly, to Tom's amazement, the hanging chair began to creak and slowly move back and forth. In less than a minute, it was swinging back and forth in huge arcs, just as if somebody was sitting on it. Tom stared at the swing in awe. He knew instantly what was making the swing move, or rather, who. It was his brother. There was no doubt in his mind whatsoever. He just knew that it was his brother sitting in that chair at that moment, listening to the music. In fact, he could literally feel Jeffrey's presence. Eventually, the swinging stopped. However, Tom was transformed. His brother was still alive. He was a ghost, yes, but he was still around. Tom was delighted, and it wasn't long before he tried to call his brother's ghost again, his spirit. And Tom soon discovered that he could call his brother to the swing anytime he wanted. All he had to do was turn on the tape player to high volume and play a certain song. The song was Pink Floyd's Comfortably Numb. And every time Tom played this particular song, the swing would start to rock back and forth by itself, just as if somebody was sitting on it. Tom couldn't believe what was happening, and finally he decided to share his secret with someone. He chose his good friend, Christine Dennett. One day, he invited Christine over and told her his secret, that he could call on the spirit of his dead brother for her if she wanted him to do so. So Christine was a little bit shocked, a little bit concerned, but she saw no reason why not to try it and see if he was telling the truth. It sounded interesting, and Tom certainly was sincere. She was sure he wasn't joking, but she could hardly believe her eyes when Tom turned on the music and the chair began to move all by itself. As Christine says, and I quote, "He had a chair that hung from a chain that didn't touch the ground. It was a swinging chair. And he said that he could get his dead brother to sit in the chair and swing it when the music was on. And he'd turn the music on really loud and the chair would swing. I saw it happen. He would just turn on the music and the chair would slowly start in a teeny little swing and then get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it would just swing all by itself. Nobody was there making it swing. And it was a heavy chair, but it was taut as if somebody was sitting on it. It wasn't floating in any way." Christine tried to figure out how this event could have been faked, but it seemed impossible. The chair was behaving exactly as if somebody was swinging in it. Tom seemed very casual about the whole affair and seemed comfortable with the knowledge that his brother's spirit was still around. This incident convinced Christine even more that ghosts were real. She had had previous encounters, but she had never experienced anything like this. But for Tom, it made all the difference in the world. He slowly lifted out of his depression and began to lead a normal life. He eventually stopped calling his brother's spirit, as there was simply no need to do so. He was satisfied. He now knew that life continues after death, and one day he would see his brother again. And this is just one more case of how love can transcend all barriers, including death. So those are the three really creepy ghost stories I wanted to present to you today. I did write about them in my book, California Ghosts. So if you want to learn more about them, you can check that out. But the reason I wanted to do this video today is to not only let you know that ghosts are real, but how they can manifest in a variety of ways. The first case, the ghost that came to bed, is an active haunting and shows how people can interact directly with ghosts, even to the point of touching them and feeling them. This was quite a negative encounter for the witness, and she is happy to forget about it. The second case is really interesting because this is a good example of what investigators call a crisis apparition. While technically she didn't see an apparition, she got advance warning that someone she knew had passed away. Often people who have a crisis apparition, it involves someone that they know well or are emotionally attached to in some way. What's interesting about this case is Dorothy and Marjorie were not really getting along. They weren't exactly friends. In fact, they were angry at each other, but there was an emotional connection there. So I think that is probably why Dorothy had this vision of blood. I think it's also probably because Dorothy herself is a bit psychic. And the third case, a brother's ghost, the reason I wanted to present that is because it shows how powerful love is, to the point that even it can even transcend death. And this I wouldn't call a haunting. I would call this a spirit visitation. I'm pretty sure the brothers knew he had passed on and really just came to visit his little brother to let him know that he's still fine. So those are the three cases. I hope you've enjoyed this episode today. I really appreciate you watching. And until next time, keep searching for answers, keep looking for the truth, and most important, keep having fun. Happy Halloween!